In this video, we're going to be thinking about leadership skills and why they're really important to think about at this stage of your career. When we think about careers, they're not actually linear. We hit different transition points, and you can see these transition points all the way through your life. So if you think back to your first day at senior school or your first day at university, perhaps even your first day joining a law firm, and at that point it was very clear that you were entering a new space and you needed to pick up new skills. Now, the thing about your career progression, and particularly as a lawyer, is that your career doesn't actually have those transition points flagged at each time you hit them. Once you qualify and become an associate, you're incrementally picking up skills as you go along. So as an associate, you may be doing work under someone's direction, and then you become more senior and you become more autonomous. But actually, you're picking up specific leadership skills relating to how you work as an individual. By the time you become a senior associate, those skills are actually the bedrock of what are going to be the next steps in your career. However, as a senior associate, the scope of your role and the scope of your impact starts to increase. Now, that's really important because at this point, it's essential to recognise that your technical skills, while still incredibly important and still developing, are not the only skills that you need. Why do I say this? Well, when you think about what you're being required to do as a senior associate, and then as you look forward further into your career, you're actually moving away from actually being the producer of your own work to actually working with other people, because you're no longer under the direction of somebody, but rather you are both working with other people and also aligning to other people's needs and helping them produce what you need them to do. When you become a senior associate, this role, because you've got this additional scope in terms of responsibility and also impact, requires you to start to think about your leadership behaviours in a slightly different way. It's not simply about producing really excellent work, although that's still important, but it's also about how your behaviour and how you interact with other people allows you to become really effective in growing your role and creating the outcomes that you need for your career and also to help those around you. When we think about leadership development, there's a very clear progression from leading direction to becoming more autonomous to then becoming independent. And as you become a senior associate, you're much more autonomous than you probably think you are, and you're invited to step into a more autonomous role. The thing about becoming a senior associate is it's probably the hardest transition that you will go through in your career. And I speak from experience because I've been through a lot of career transitions. I've been a senior lawyer, I've run a securitization team, I've been a strategy consultant, I've been a government regulator, I've been a research fellow at NYU Law, and I've been in lots of different places and experienced lots of different transitions. And the one I found hardest was to senior associate. And that's because the expectations that were on me in terms of my performance and what I was required to do weren't necessarily as clear and obvious as I thought they were. I thought I was there to do great work and deliver great content, but my job was actually to get other people to do things with me and for me. And that's the biggest transition step you will make in your leadership career. When we think about this transition to getting people to do things with us and for us, we also have to recognise that the technical skills that we have, however important they are, will not get us to the next stage. In business schools, this is described as what got you here won't get you there. And this is really important because a lot of senior associates think that working harder and producing more and more good quality output is the trick to the next stage of their career. The truth is, it's not. It's really simple. You can work incredibly hard and become successful, but at some point you will run out of capacity and you will not be able to develop any further. So, having said all of that, what's the theory about leadership skill? How do we think about leadership skills that we need to pick up to expand the scope of our role and become more effective and hopefully progress our careers in whatever direction we want to go? Well, the theory is relatively simple. There are hundreds of books written on this. You can find a million videos online. But the simple truth is that leadership development is about moving from being the person who produces everything that you do to getting the people around you to work with you to achieve your goals. That sounds very selfish, but it's not. And the reason it's not selfish is because if you are continually producing every aspect of what you need to do, you are not A, allowing those beneath you to develop, and B, demonstrating to those above you that you have the capabilities and skills required to be successful in a more strategic role. So what do you need to do to develop these skills to become more effective? It's really simple. There are 4 things that you need to think about, and we're going to look at over the next 2 sessions. The first is delegation. People really, really struggle with delegation, and that's because it's requiring other people to do work that you supervise but you are not continually engaged in. And that requires you to let go, and that's hard, and we'll talk about that in another video. The second is communication, and communication is at the very core of being an effective leader. If you can't communicate well, you cannot get people to do things with you and for you. And the reason is that they won't understand what's going on in your head, and quite often they will either make assumptions about what you require, or they just will completely misunderstand what you're asking them to do. Communication is more than simply talking, and again, we're going to cover this in another video. When we look to the wider leadership skills that you need to develop, we bump into politics and navigating politics in organisations. The number of people who say to me, I don't do politics, is absolutely extraordinary, because every single group you are in, every system, every organisation, every family, every team has politics. And the thing about politics is not that it is toxic and nasty, but you need to recognise they are there, understand the rules of the game, and learn to progress your way through them in a way that you're comfortable with. And again, we'll be talking about that in another video. Another key aspect of becoming successful in your career is building networks. And networking is incredibly important, and yet again is something people find very difficult. Networking is all about building good, lasting relationships that are mutually beneficial and pique your curiosity and the curiosity of other people. It is not about big conference halls. And we'll come on to talk about why that's important both internally and externally for your career. These all seem really obvious, so why can we sometimes find these transitions hard? Why can't I just stand here and say, delegate more, network more, and you will be successful? And the reason is it requires us to adopt different behaviours, and different behaviours require us to learn. And when we learn, we have to come out of our comfort zone. Our comfort zone may not be a very comfortable place. I've certainly been in comfort zones where I've been working 100-hour weeks. It hasn't been comfortable, but I've known exactly what's required of me. When you come out of your comfort zone and go into your learning zone, this is the area where you have to pick up new skills. And inherently, you feel a little bit vulnerable and anxious because you think that other people around you can see that you don't know, or you don't like taking the risk of trying new behaviours. The learning zone is a place that you will continually come back to throughout your career. Every time you transition into a new level, a new role, a new job, you will enter a new learning zone. Okay? You have to get comfortable with it. That anxiety that you feel is actually an incredibly healthy part of recognising that you are developing your career and your role. The problem is if you go too far from your learning zone and you become too uncomfortable, you go into your panic zone. And in your panic zone, it's not a good place to be. In the panic zone, you risk either freezing and suddenly becoming incapable of working, or being tempted to go back to your comfort zone and returning to the technical skills that made you successful in the past. I have seen so many people whose careers have floundered because they have returned to being technical experts when they're required to be leaders. I can actually remember various stages in my career where I was overwhelmed by the expectations that were being put on me to the point that I actually ceased to function effectively. And I was lucky that I had a boss that took me out for lunch and said, I don't know what's going on, but you're not doing what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And I'm immensely grateful to her because she saved my career and put me on the course to what I do now. So think about whether or not you are experiencing anxiety as you pick up these new skills. If you are, that's fine. Don't allow that anxiety to stretch you into the panic zone and stop you developing. So what? What does this really mean? Well, really there are 2 things you need to think about when we are looking at leadership skills over the next couple of months. The first is, leadership is actually about what you do. Other people will not make you a leader. You are responsible for developing. And the second is that leadership requires you to actually understand what it is you should be doing and how you need to build the skills to allow you to do that. So it requires a degree of self-awareness about both your strengths and your weaknesses. And we'll talk about that in the sessions. What I'd like you to do when you go away from watching this video is just think about a couple of things. First, what do you think your leadership strengths currently are? And where do you think you might have weaknesses? Second, do you think there might be something that's holding you back or that's making you feel anxious that if you begin to work on will allow you to become more effective and free up more of your time to do a wider scope, a wider role? And when you've had a chance to think about those two questions, then think about, okay, so what can I work on to develop now? What's one area that I can really focus on, which I can see will allow me to work better with other people, and in particular, getting people to do things with you and for you?